Hello, book lovers. Welcome to Must Love Books. Hello, and welcome back to Must Love Books podcast. Today, I am here with author Elise Kova for the release of Arcana Academy. Hi, Elise. How are you?
Hi, I'm doing well. Thank you. How are you?
I am doing so great. Very excited to have you on the show today.
I'm excited to be here and thank you to everyone for listening.
So, why don't you tell our listeners a little bit about Arcana Academy?
This is always so much of a struggle, like as an author. So thank you for the practice. And dear listeners, thank you for allowing me to practice on you. So Arcana Academy tells the story of Clara Graysword. She is an outlaw and she has been put into prison because she has been illegally using tarot. This is a form of magic that is highly regulated by the kingdom, and only individuals who have gone through and graduated from Arcana Academy and who have been positioned with one of the noble clans that still exist in this world are permitted to use magic. So she was using it without going through this process and was put in jail. And our story begins on a day when she is summoned by the second born prince of Orcalis, Prince Kaelis. And Kaelis says that she has continued to illegally ink tarot in prison, never mind the fact that the warden was basically forcing her to do it. And so she is going to be executed. Well, this turns out to be a very contrived plot ploy to both test her skills and get her out of the prison. So she escapes, and Kaelis is like, "See, I knew you could." And then he says, "I have a deal for you. I will give you your freedom if you help me steal a legendary power from my father. And oh, by the way, to keep you safe, we probably should make you a fake noble who is going to be my bride, just to get people from asking too many questions about you and where you came from, which you can imagine backfires stupendously." So then the story unfolds from there. It's kind of like, I always suck at saying it's like other books because I'm like, I'm not as good as these authors, but I've heard people liken it to One Dark Window for some similarities with the magic system. I've heard people liken it to kind of a grown-up, edgier, little bit of the cutthroat academy school setting that you might find in Fourth Wing. And of course, just kind of all of the classic fantasy tropes and things that we all know and love, myself included.
Of that. And you know what? I have to say, I am also a writer. You are so right. Coming up with comp titles to compare your story to something else, even if you know that there's some similar themes and stuff, there's always that immediate how can I compare myself to this author? Like, I love this other book. There's no way I could compare to that. I definitely relate to that feeling.
Yes, every single time. Even when my publisher, even like when we private, like my editor privately emails me to ask me for comp titles, I'm like, I've never read a book in my life. I don't know of any books.
I've had that problem many times as well. Ask me my favorite book, ask me my favorite movie even, and nope, I've never read a book before. I've never watched a movie. What's a TV?
Yeah, no.
And then
What even is that?
right, what is that?
We're not even 5 minutes in and I'm already tangenting, but I was at a panel once and they did an icebreaker question where they had everyone go like, you have 30 seconds or a minute or something like that. Name as many books as you can think of. Just any books, just name books. And it got to me, and I was seriously sitting there for like 15 seconds, just deer in the headlights, couldn't think of any. And finally, someone in the audience shouts, "You write books. Your books are books." And I'm just like, "Oh, right, I do. I do write books, and I do know that they exist."
That's incredible. I mean, I read a lot, and if you just ask me, hey, name every book you can think of, I'd probably sit there for a
Yeah,
little bit as well. Like, okay, we're buffering.
we're
We're
buffering.
buffering.
I will say, bringing it back though, I do love it when I see readers say, this book kind of made me think of this book and this book. because you are doing something that I cannot. And I inherently appreciate that when you do.
I think it's easier for readers because they don't have that sense of self and that ego that gets in the way that makes it harder for us to compare ourselves to other authors.
Absolutely. And I also think readers can pick up on things that you might be too close to your own work to pick up on. And it goes both ways. Sometimes readers will pick up things and I'm like, "Yes, I did my job right. I wanted you to catch that." And then there are other times where they're like, "This book made me think of this book because of this little subplot element." And I was like, "Huh, I would never think of that, but I appreciate it. You're not wrong." So, readers are awesome. That's the moral of the story. Podcast over. No, I'm just kidding.
That's it. That's our episode.
That's it. That's a wrap. I don't know where we can go from here.
Well, I guess we could go on and talk about your inspirations for Arcana Academy.
Yeah, absolutely. So I learned to read tarot for the first time when I was like 8. I say 8, it might have been 9, but very young. And I don't remember. I was young enough that I don't remember. And since then, tarot has always been a part of my life. I enjoy it in different ways. Of course, when I'm younger, you want to believe that magic is real. Now I'm a little bit more skeptical, a little older, a little more jaded, as some might say. But then I also have seen spooky, accurate tarot readings. So
Yeah.
I wanted to write a magic system based on tarot for years. And I kept feeling like I needed more time with the idea. Like I needed to sit with it more. I needed to grow as an author more because I really wanted every card to basically have a different spell attached to it that is inspired by the way the card could be read in real life. And so I knew that was going to be ambitious. And I was like, okay, I'm not ready yet. I'm still working on this idea. It still needs to percolate. And then eventually I went, okay, the time is right. The time is now. And that became Arcana Academy. And all of the other components of the story is really just things that I've always loved to write. And I'm like, I'm going to have this world that's based on tarot, which is something I love. So I might as well include other things that I love. And I love school settings. And I love, romances between royals and commoners. And I love enemies to lovers. And I love heists and found family. And so it almost became a little bit of a game to see what I could put in there before it became too much. And some stuff was edited out, but I'm really happy with everything that made it in.
I love that. So I just want to say the idea of tarot cards becoming spells kind of like brought me back to a show I used to watch as a
Please
little
say
kid.
Card Captor
Card
Sakura.
Captor Sakura. Yes, card captors. Like as soon as you started saying that, I'm like, oh my goodness. How did I forget this show? That was a long time. That was many years ago.
Speaking of reviewers, some reviewers have said that this book sort of makes them think of like a Yu-Gi-Oh adjacent
Yu-Gi-Oh! I was
fantasy
thinking that,
world.
yeah.
And I'm like, I'm not mad at this comparison, but I am just waiting on someone to say Card Captor Sakura. And I'm just like, where is it? So thank you. Thank you for making that connection because I grew up, one of my friends had the Clow cards, the merchandise book of Clow cards, and I would just go over to her room after school and because she lived in walking distance and I would just sit and look at the cards for forever. It's funny because I actually went back when I was working on the idea and I'm like, is this too similar? And it's not actually. So if you're like, I want a book that is like Cardcaptor Sakura, I'm like, maybe not, but it has vibes. It does
The
have
vibes.
the vibes. It is funny because it's like people ask me for comp titles and I'm like, I can't. I'm blanking on books. Again, that insecurity, whatever else you want to call it. But I can tell you about 4 or 5 anime that went into inspiration to any one of my books because, I mean, you can't read one of my books without shaking a stick at a Howl's Moving Castle nod because let's face it, was there ever a more handsome man invented than Howl in the Howl Moving Castle
Oh,
movie?
absolutely.
Yeah, stunning. Peak. Anyway, now
And
we're now we're an anime podcast.
yeah, see, here we go. A little bit of everything.
So yes, you never know what you're gonna get when Elise is on an interview.
I love that. And you know what? It makes it more fun. Maybe for our listeners, but definitely for me.
Oh, there we go. And hopefully there's that one listener that's geeking out with us.
There's got to be one somewhere. So, listeners, if you are a card captor lover, please let us know. There's
Yeah,
not
come and
many
say
of
hi on
us.
our social media.
Yes. Come find us. We'll talk. We'll chat. So let's talk a little bit about your writing process. Did you write Arcana Academy differently than your previous novels, or do you have kind of a similar process you follow through all of your writing?
My process is controlled chaos at best. I'm a plantser. So, for anyone unfamiliar, a lot of authors will say they're plotters, where they plot out meticulously, outline, that kind of thing, or they're pantsers. They're flying by the seat of their pants. I would say I am more pantser than I am plotter, but I usually have to know the main beats of the story. So, the opening image, the call to action, the midpoint, the climax, the ending, and probably a couple of important hallmarks to the character arc that's going to go through. But then usually that's the extent of the planning I do. And between those important things, there's just a lot of yada, yada, yada. Stuff happens. They somehow get from this point A to point B. And so that's more or less what I did with Arcana Academy. And it's more or less the same as what I've done with my other books. Now, I am actually working on Arcana Academy book 2 right now. And that one I did outline a lot more because for subsequent books in a series, especially like a book 2 that follows this with book 1, there's so many moving parts. There's so many important players and plots and subplots that I want to make sure that everything kind of gets resolved and gets to where it needs to be. So I will outline more later on in the process sometimes.
I think that's a good way of approaching it, honestly, especially when you're working on a series. Keeps things uniform, avoiding plot holes and
I'm sure there will still be plot holes because I am not perfect, but yeah, it's definitely the goal to try and keep track of everything and eliminate the errors as much as possible as we progress in the narrative.
I love that. So I kind of had an idea, and let me know if you're open to this.
Okay.
Okay. We were talking about tarot cards. I read tarot cards.
Okay.
Should I pull out some tarot cards?
Like do you want to do a reading? Is that kind of
Yeah.
your thought? Like,
Yeah.
okay, all right,
Do you
sure.
want, should we do that?
I mean, maybe let's keep it simple because there are definitely some tarot
Oh, yeah.
spreads that are
Yeah.
like really involved, maybe like
No,
a
let me
one
go
or
ahead
a
and
three
pull out
card or something,
a
but
14 card Celtic cross.
we'll do like my like 20 card past life spread. That
Yes.
that's probably a
Mm-hmm.
really great use of our time. The listeners will love that.
Totally love it. Since we are a book podcast, we will be using the Edgar Allan Poe tarot
Ooh,
cards. I got these as a birthday gift a few years ago, and I love them.
I am a big Poe fan, so I'm here for the use of this
Me
deck.
as well. So, like, people won't be able to see this, but the backs of the cards have a raven on them
We're
and
holding an eyeball in its beak.
holding an
I love
eyeball.
that.
Yeah, nice and spooky. And then I don't normally read through the books when I do a tarot card. However, the companion book tells you all about the art and which of Poe's stories the art coincides with.
Oh, fun. So it's
I
even like
love
a good
that.
way to like find new stories that maybe you might have
Yeah.
missed or you skipped or whatever. Oh, that's fun. And this is one thing I will say, just sort of throwing in my linking this to my approach to Arcana Academy and tarot and whatnot, of every deck sort of has its own nuances and every reader has their slightly different approaches to how they read the cards. And that was something that I really tried hard to incorporate into the magic system of this world where every individual, like when they give a reading, might read a little bit differently, or how someone applies a spell based on their skill level and their power and their knowledge. The spell might take on a slightly different form. So one of the things that I'm thinking of is the Five of Swords in Arcana Academy. That card can summon a weapon, basically, and the weapon will slowly start hurting the wielder until blood is drawn. So it craves blood, and so it's like you have a period of time where you can't like dismiss it and it hurts you to let it go until you've fed it blood basically, and then you can dismiss it at will. Even if it's just like a little nick, but you have to feed it blood. But of course, how people use that card, someone might summon a rapier, someone might summon a dagger, someone might summon a broadsword. There's that sort of variance in play in many of the cards of how they can be used. And I wanted that to show up in the creativity of how the different characters wielded the magic throughout the book.
I love that. That is such a great way to, one, show the different characterizations of the characters and how each one presents. I think that's awesome. As well as show how tarot cards themselves can be interpreted differently by the readers. So you've got some real world tie-ins there in your fantasy magic, and I love that.
Yeah, that's the goal. And it's not by any means like a primer of could teach someone tarot just by reading the book or anything, but I wanted it to be for the people who don't know tarot, they're just going to have a good time. There's a lot of different spells, there's a lot of different magics. We're here to have a good time. We love it. But for the people who do or who are curious about it, there's a lot more like that you can dig deeper. And there's actually a glossary in the back of the book that details every spell attached to every card. So if you get confused along the way, you can go back and reference that. But I asked my publisher, I was like, let's not include all of the cards and all of the spells. Let's only include the cards and the spells that are seen and shown in the book. And so that way, I was hoping that individuals who are curious about tarot or who know it could start to kind of guess what future cards might do and how they might come into play later on in the novel.
There's honestly not much that I love more than a fantasy book with a glossary.
We got a glossary, we got two maps. We are deep in the fantasy world in Arcana
Yeah, two.
Academy.
I'm sorry, did you say two maps?
Two maps. And the reason being is
I'm
because
swooning.
the maps were done by Diana Dwork. I thought it was important to have a map of the kingdom because you get a little bit of a taste of these different power politics that are going on in these noble clans. And so I think it's important to have that zoomed out image. But at the same time, the story in book one almost exclusively takes place in Arcana Academy and the adjacent city, Eclipse City. I think it's important to have a map just of Eclipse City because it will make it a lot clearer when they're moving from one location to another, kind of where they're going and what they're doing and that sort of thing, because every city has its charm. And I think that a map was important. Unfortunately, my publisher agreed. So they were like, let's do two maps. And I'm like, you guys are awesome. Thank you.
That's incredible. I cannot wait to pick up this book. We've got two maps, we've got a glossary. What more could you ask for?
Hopefully a good story inside, but that's up
Yeah.
to the readers to decide.
So we are going to pull some tarot cards for Elise
Okay.
right here on
Oh,
the
for
podcast.
me.
Yeah, I'm going to pull some
Ooh.
for you.
Okay. Sending energy.
Do you have any questions you want to ask, or should I just pull some cards?
I think just pull like two or three cards. Let's just see what the universe
Let's
has to tell
see.
me today.
All right, our first card is Strength.
Ooh, okay.
And we have, she is riding a stone lion. This card is gorgeous. The story, the Poe story for this card is the Telltale Heart. We have Annabelle Lee as Strength, representing her powerful influence over Edgar Allan Poe's emotions.
Ooh, okay.
And the book also shows us a little bit of something he wrote about Annabelle Lee. So I'm going to go ahead and share that. And so all the night tide, I lie down by the side of my darling, my life and my bride. That's so beautiful.
I love his work for a reason. It is perpetually stunning.
And, to describe the card a little bit for our listeners, we have a gorgeous castle and a sunset, and Annabelle Lee is riding this great big stone lion, which is incredible. And for those who are not familiar with tarot, the Strength card represents courage and resilience and persistence.
You know what? I'm happy to have that card given
It's
to
always
me.
a good card. Yeah.
So I will tie it in to Arcana Academy. I'll use these cards to give little teasers and insights about the world. The major arcana. So every arcanist in Arcana Academy learns how to ink, read, and wield. Those are the three classes of the minor arcana. And so inking is making the cards, wielding is casting the cards as spells, and reading is much like our world, reading the cards for divination purposes. But they only do it for the minor arcana because the major arcana are believed to be a myth. They don't exist in the world anymore if they ever did, and no one can ink or wield them. At least that is what is believed to be the case.
I love that. I love how we are now getting some teasers out of our tarot reading as well.
Why not? Why not?
Why not? So the second card I drew for you is Eight of Swords. This is another card for the Telltale Heart, showing an image of the premature burial. It's kind of funny because we actually did talk about this already without knowing so, but it is about having some self-imposed thoughts and limiting beliefs. So how we were just talking about how those insecurities and making it difficult to compare yourself to other authors that you love and appreciate, that just showed up in your reading.
You know what's really funny is the Telltale Heart is my favorite of all of the Poe stories. Cliche, probably, but it is. And so I just feel like the deck is picking up on that. So for this teaser, I will say, you said it was the Eight of Swords, right?
Yes.
So the spell, if you were to cast this card as an arcanist, eight spectral swords would pin the individual that you have cast it to in place if they could not otherwise damage or destroy the card, get rid of it, or get rid of the swords before they struck them.
All right. I love that. So our third and final card. Oh, this is one I really like. The Nine of Cups. It's a very
Oh, I love the
pretty,
Nine.
happy card. We have a woman in a gorgeous long Renaissance style dress. She has these goblets that are gothic with a skull on them, very Poe. And they're all filled with flowers and vines. And she just is surrounded by all these good things. This one, you're not going to believe it, is also the Telltale Heart.
3 for 3. Perfection. This is what I'm saying. Sometimes it gets spooky.
This one is representing Eleonora as she finds happiness with the love of her life in a paradise called the Valley of the Many-Colored Grass. So she's
Ooh.
standing in a field with hills and blue skies, and she is reflecting on satisfaction. And this card represents happiness, satisfaction, fulfilling your wishes, and having blessings for abundance.
So I will not say what this card does because you actually see it in action in chapter 2 of Arcana Academy, because this is a particularly powerful and popular card for arcanists to ink and wield. But I will say, speaking of inking, I'll have my teaser for this one be that one of the things that I was thinking about was, okay, you have the cards, but you also have to make the cards to use because when you cast them, it's kind of like a one-time spell. Like once it's cast, it's gone. You don't continually get it back in your deck or you can't continually use the same card. And so I thought about how are these cards made, and that really defined a component of the world where you have the process of acquiring the materials to create the powders that become the inks for these cards, and then the actual process of refining those materials. So for cups, that is a rare crystal that's found only in this sunken mine that is underwater. I got really deep into cave diving for a minute there. So it's a very risky process to extract all of these materials, and they extract the crystals, and then the crystals are then reduced into powder at mills. But of course, since these agents, these raw materials are magically charged, refining them is a difficult and dangerous process. And so arcanists who don't follow the crown's law are punished by being sent to these really harsh and brutal mills where they refine these raw materials into powder to make more cards. And it's
I
considered to
am
be basically a death sentence.
I am loving the world building here.
Thank you.
You're so welcome.
One of the things that I really love is I really love looking at power specifically, and power can be religion, power can be the governmental systems, power can be magic, and I love looking at all of those things when I'm building the world and trying to make sense of how the world works. And so once I knew that I wanted my magic system to be grounded in tarot, I said, okay, this is not a magic system where I mean, I guess it could be, but it wasn't what I was building, where it was like, I can just think something and magic happens. You need materials, you need resources. So there has to be a whole history as to where do these materials come from and who has them, because whoever has them then has power. And since arcanists are rare, the people who control the arcanists are then more powerful. So all of those things kind of came into play in my mind. And even though, like, obviously as an author, you don't want to bog down the pacing of the story or the plot in its present form with just the textbooks of history that you have written down. All of it is there. And I will say I added up all of my world building notes at one point, and I think it totaled like 35,000 words of just my histories, my magic, the characters, all of it was like a small novella of world building.
That's incredible. You could honestly release like like a history book, essentially, the world building book. I love when fantasy series do that. Put it all
I
together.
I would only do it after the final book in this
After,
trilogy is
yes.
out because and it would be obviously something for like the diehard fans if I was ever gonna do it, just because it's like there's so many spoilers that get wrapped up in there because it's like, oh, there's this weird thing that they do in the world. Why do they do this weird thing? And it's like, oh, well, there's a reason for it, but I can't tell you yet.
Of that. And I have to say, I am still just blown away with how the impromptu tarot cards, first off, they all happen to be ones in the book,
Yes.
and they all related to things that we are discussing. And you know what? They're all telltale heart. Like, this was perfect. This was
I appreciated this. And you know what? As far as readings go, that was a pretty good reading. Like I read that as keep calm, carry on. You're going for your goals, you're going for your wishes, but also don't let that self-doubt like pull you down too much. Like that's a good reading.
That's good reading. Like, we're magical. We just did
We are.
that. Confirmed live here on the podcast. That was incredible. I have never done something like that on the podcast before. So that was super fun for me. And I hope our listeners all like it and don't think I'm weird. I am weird. It's okay.
We're all a little bit weird.
We wouldn't be here if we weren't, to be honest.
No, I talk to people in my head and then write it on dead trees and people really enjoy it. So like we have
Exactly.
shared hallucinations together about hot men. Like the benchmark of weird is very low here.
That's fantastic. That was the most fun activity I've done on this. Like, seriously. It was great.
Good. I really enjoyed it too. Thank you for that. And I think it's so cool that you had your own deck.
I have literally, because I'm slowly in the process of reorganizing my shelves, which really just means everything is in piles all around me. I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. I have 9 tarot and oracle decks within reaching distance of my person.
That is amazing. And you know, that's another thing that kind of propelled me to write this story is the amount of people that I meet that I mean, not only is it something I'm passionate about and I think is fun, but the amount of people that I meet and they are either like, "Oh yeah, I have a tarot deck too," or "I've always wanted to read tarot," or "I'm really curious about it. Can you tell me more?" It is just such a wide swath of people that it was almost like an invitation of let's all geek out together about this thing that I think a lot of us are at least somewhat interested in. Again, even if you've never, I wrote the book intended to be like if you love tarot, it can be a love letter to you. But if you have never heard of anything about tarot and you don't care, you're still going to have a great time. There's still the heist, the found family, the school trials, the enemies to lovers romance with the headmaster prince. Like there is all of that wrapped into it as well. So it is not just a book where it's like a textbook on tarot with some fancy trimmings.
I love this kind of fiction and specifically this style of fantasy that is rooted in you've got some sort of intrigue going on. We've got the dark academia vibes and enemies to lovers.
Yes. Enemies to lovers is one of my favorite tropes. I absolutely love it because I just think the tension is so juicy. And the other part that I love about enemies to lovers is the fact that it is inherently slow burn for me personally, my opinion. If the enemies are hooking up within like the first 3 or 4 chapters, there's a little bit, I mean, there are exceptions to every rule, but if it's like a genuine, like we're just getting together, I'm like, how much of enemies were you actually? I mean, Clara, she truly believes in her bones at the start of the book that Kaelis not only is the one who has been charged with overseeing the arcanists of the kingdom because he is the only one of the king's 3 sons who has any magic powers. And so therefore he is in charge of making the laws and upholding them that she is so vehemently against. But she also believes that he was the prince who threw her into prison because he is in charge of laws surrounding arcanists. And she truly believes in her heart of hearts that he is the prince who murdered her mother. And so there is nothing about him that she is inclined to see as redeeming. And so I just love that opportunity to take these two characters that have every reason to dislike each other, or at least one of them believes they have every reason to dislike each other, and slowly whittle that down over time.
I am, and our podcast listeners do know this already, but I'm a huge fan of anything that has that slow burn to it, but especially enemies to lovers because the two just they meld in together so well. But outside of my author interview side of Most Love Books podcast, I also do the Something Smutty book club where we all have a little nickname based on what we like to read. And my nickname in the book club is Slow Burn.
Which I mean, I am here for. My very first series, Air Awakens, that is probably my slowest of slow burns. I am going to tell on myself here and confess that in that series they don't even kiss until book two. Like the first kiss is it, and it's not even at the beginning. I love that tension building between two characters.
It is a slow burn in the truest of senses.
Very much so. I think, the biggest thing that I have to say about this book is, and I hopefully have hinted on this, but I have told my publisher I wouldn't call this a romantasy personally. I would call it a fantasy romance. Now, genres are flexible. Everyone has their own definitions. Even there is a difference between what the industry says a definition of a genre is and what readers tend to think of. So there is a lot of gray area here, and I will be the first to admit that. But I think the distinction that I'm trying to make is for me, a romantasy is the plot is the romance. The plot is two characters coming together. And if you remove that romance, you basically don't have a plot. It's a love story with fantasy trimmings. And I would say my Married to Magic series is a lot more of that romantasy vibe. So if you want that, I have that in my backlist. But I would say for me, I originally went into Arcana Academy thinking that it was going to be a true romantasy. And as I started writing it, because like I said, I discovered the characters and I discover a lot about the world and the story as I'm going. It ended up being so much more. And I don't want that to come off as putting romantasy down because, like, strict romantasy of it is the love story, because I think love stories are some of the most powerful things out there. I love writing them. I will write them again in the future. But it just wasn't what this story was. And so while the romance does play a big part in the story, and a lot of components of the romance are the driving force because you have these two unlikely characters that are working together and falling in love despite themselves, despite they will not admit it for a long time. But there is so much more than that in this story. And so I say that again, not to put down any genre, but more to hopefully set expectations of what readers are going to get from Arcana Academy. If you want a romance forward story where the romance is the plot, love those books. I'm right there with you, but that is not this. But if you want something that has political intrigue, that has an abundance of characters with side plots, with goals, that has readers saying, I finished the book and I still don't know who I can trust, which I'm like, yes, I achieved one of my goals there. That also has a heavy dose of romance, then this is it. That's what Arcana Academy is. And I really hope that, again, regardless of if you love tarot or not, if you love fantasy and fantasy with a hefty dose of romance in it, that you will like this book. And that is my sincere and earnest hope.
And I think it's really great of you to clarify that for our listeners because there is a lot of conversation right now about what is romantasy. And it seems like publishers overwhelmingly identify anything that has fantasy and romance together as a romantasy, whether the romance is the overarching plot or a subplot between two characters. It is being filed as romantasy, probably because romantasy is hot and trending, so it's a way to sell. So I can kind of understand that. Then it just kind of leaves, romantic fantasies where the romance is still there and it's still a part of the book, but the political intrigue or whatever the conflict is going to be the overarching plot and is going to kind of overshadow that romance at times. And so it just kind of leaves, what does that count as a romantasy? There are those that say yes, because you have fantasy, romance, romantasy, romantic fantasy. The words are still there. And I think that's what makes it confusing, is because if it is just
Yeah.
a blending of the two words, then technically, I guess in a way, I can see why it would work. But there is a difference in the actual stories themselves that makes it more challenging. And there's just not enough distinction in the industry itself between the two styles.
And I think part of it comes from fantasy books with heavy romantic plots have been around for a really long time. Like it is not, some people be like, oh, this newfangled genre, romantasy. And I'm like, oh, you mean this thing that has been around since like the 70s that women have been pioneering and writing in since like the 70s and 80s? Like, oh yeah, brand new. People couldn't see me, but I was heavily air quoting there. But I I think that, it's sort of having this moment because it has a name behind it. And that is the romantasy name, as you said, sort of for better or for worse. And so I think that in some ways it's good because it's giving some books the opportunity to really shine that might not have had the opportunity to shine before. And I love that. I love to see it. As of this August, I will have been an author, a published author for 10 years. And I have seen a lot in this industry. I've had a lot of personal up and downs and learning moments and all of that throughout it. And one of the biggest things that I think I come back to is the importance of setting reader expectations going into a book because not every book is for every reader and that's okay, but I think that it's about finding those people who are the right readers for your books. Like if someone said I love epic fantasy but I hate romance. I can't stand it if it's more than like a mention in an epilogue that two side characters went and got married like 10 years after the events of the story. If it's anything more than that, I hate it. And I'm like, okay, then you're going to hate Arcana Academy. Because even though it's not a romantasy, it is heavy on the romance. And that's okay. That's okay that someone doesn't want to read my book. I'm okay with that. And I would rather, quite frankly, someone not pick it up who isn't a good fit for my story than waste someone's time. Like that doesn't sound good for anyone. It's not good for me, it's not good for the reader. And so that is one thing that I really try, especially when you have sort of these nebulous like genres that are coming up that the industry is still trying to define and readers are still sort of trying to define, where I want to try and be as clear as I possibly can about what the book actually is. And I will miss the mark because I can say things and I think I'm being clear and saying XYZ and someone else hears ABC from the words that I say. And that's just how it goes. But I will say, like on my website, elisekova.com, for all of my series, I have genres and tropes listed out on the books pages of my website. So you can kind of see, if you're ever curious, how I'm defining them and where I put them under, if that is ever helpful to you, because it is really important to me.
That was very eloquently put. I love that.
Thank you. Thank you. I try. Sometimes I get lucky and sometimes I'm like,
That's me as well. In fact, there have been times while editing this podcast that I've caught myself just going blah blah blah. Like
the worst though, the worst is when you think you've been eloquent. Like this has happened to me when I've watched videos of myself, like after the fact from panels and whatnot, where like I'll be asked a question, I'll be like, I nailed that in the moment. And then I'll watch a video someone posted of me later on, and I will just be mortified, wondering, what am I saying? Shouting at my phone, stop, stop, Elise, just stop talking.
I have been there. I have been there more than once.
We learn and people are still here willing to listen to us. So once again, thank you, readers and listeners.
Yes, thank you for being here. Thank you for listening to me Babylon. And thank you for listening to all of my wonderful, wonderful guests that I am so blessed to be able to have join me on this show.
Well, it is a delight to be here. And again, if anyone listening picks up Arcana Academy, I hope you enjoy it. I hope it is the book for you. And if it is not the book for you, then I hope the next book you pick up is that it is an amazing 5-star read for you.
5-star reads for everybody. That is
Five
the
star
true
reads for
wish.
everybody.
Hmm.
That is my, in my heart of hearts, that is my wish. And I'm like, whether that's my book or someone else's, just go find books you love. Reading books should be fun. It should not be like slogging through a book that makes you question why you're even on this planet, unless that's, it's some kind of metaphysical book that's designed to make you question why you're on this planet. But you get what I mean.
In which case, if it's intentional, that one's on
Yeah,
you.
that one's on you. That one's on you.
So, Elise, I just want to thank you again for joining me today. This has been an absolute blast. And for all of our listeners, please connect with Elise. Go ahead and pick up a copy of Arcana Academy. And just thank you all for listening. Thank you for being here.
The first edition is a deluxe hardcover. I know that's kind of the norm right now in publishing, so no one's probably shocked to hear that. But it does have gold gilded edges, so it looks like kind of the edges of a gilded tarot deck. That was the idea behind it. But it will eventually go away. So if you really love the way that the deluxe edition looks, I would get it sooner over later, because eventually once it is gone, it is gone.
Me about to go run out right now.
Yeah. Thank you again. This has been a delight.
Thank you everyone for listening. This has been Must Love Books. You can find us on Instagram, Facebook, and Patreon under @MustLoveBooksPodcast. Thank you and happy reading.
If you're a podcast host, listen up, this one's for you. My name is Allie Jackson. I'm the host of Finding Mr. Height, a dating and relationship podcast that I've been doing for 4 years now, sharing my positive and practical approach to dating that's built on my own life experience. And I wanted to share another experience that I've had, my secret behind monetizing my show. It's called Red Circle, and I was just telling my colleague about how much I love their platform. With Red Circle, not only am I getting a seamless hosting experience, but I also love the support I receive in ad sales. It's not just typical ad sales either. It's targeted opportunities based on my show and my life. And the platform is super simple. You just set your preferences and Red Circle matches you with sponsors that align with your show. You can vet every opportunity and their platform gives you great analytics. More recently too, my Red Circle team has brought me opportunities outside of my podcast on social media to really augment the podcast partnerships, bring them full circle. I just can't recommend them enough. If you want to give it a try, go to redcircle.com to get your free trial. That's redcircle.com for a free trial.